Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I am Allie Heisong, coming at you live from Sneads Ferry, North Carolina. Joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. Still going to take some getting used to Dustin.
I knew. I felt it coming. I was like, I wonder if she's going to do it, but she got it. Yeah,
I
guys,
got it.
Second week, I have had a little more sleep, so I won't go off on some weird random tangent this time on the show or go into sleepy land. But Allie, I've got tomorrow night will be one full week in the 216. I got to tell you, it has been with my new job with 92.3 The Fan and Odyssey, has been like drinking through a fire hose over there. But telling you what, taking the city in, it is. And by the way, Cleveland, I just got to say something. I want to see the sun. I want to see the sun, by the way, because it's not been out since I've gotten here, Allie. I can't even make that up. There has been no sun in the city.
Yeah, I believe that.
But guess what, Allie? I got to see the Lake Erie out my beautiful windows here, which is what I was excited about with this place. I got to finally see the lake this morning. I'm like, oh, there is a lake out there. There's just not fog and rain. There is a lake out there. So it's been fun. It's been exciting. And Allie, it's been great so far. So.
Well, that's great. I know how stressful moving can be, so I'm glad it's a smooth transition for you. Guys, not a ton to talk about tonight. We're coming at you live on a Monday. Got some upcoming travel, so I appreciate everybody's flexibility with these shows, and sometimes you just got to pivot. But not a ton to talk about since we last spoke. The big news, obviously, is the hiring of Ken Dorsey as your offensive coordinator. So we're going to talk about that in here in just a minute. But a couple fun segments tonight. We're going to have the Medical Minute, where we talk about something very specific that took place in the NFC Championship game last night. So yeah, it's not going to be completely jam-packed with a ton of relevant Browns news, just because, this is second week of the offseason. So we're just going to have a little bit of fun tonight and keep you up to date on what we know.
And I say, drop your comments if you want to engage, and if you have anything you want to engage with us with. So
if you got a comment, question, concern, let it rip. That's what we're here for. That is what we're here for. Before we kick it off, we want to give a shout out to our friends over at K&D Property Group. Give me 1 second to get their logo pulled up here. Guys, whether it is sophisticated suburban living, luxury downtown digs, or senior housing, K&D, the largest property management company in Northeast Ohio, has the perfect home for everyone. K&D is your one-stop shop for housing in the region, with apartments and amenities for everyone, including residential, commercial, retail, also corporate housing. Find your dream home at K&D. Visit knd.com to get started. That is the letter K, the word and, the letter D.com. Let's kick it off, Dustin, with the Ken Dorsey news. I know that there was some interviews here and there with other guys around the league, Kellen Moore being one of them.
My boy.
Yeah, your guy. Ultimately, they land on Ken Dorsey. So let's talk about that. First and foremost, we didn't talk because I was, I think, in the Caribbean when they let AVP go.
Right.
And now the question is, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for the next offensive coordinator? Is this just going to be a quarterback advisory role, kind of like what AVP was, or is this going to be a true offensive coordinator that's calling plays and truly just being a head coach of the offense?
Right.
Last year, Kevin Stefanski did a really good job of identifying who had to go with Mike Prefer and Joe Woods, then bringing in Jim Schwartz and just completely giving him control of the defense. We saw how good that was, giving Bubba Ventrone complete control of special teams. We see what that did for this team. Is it time for Kevin to do the same for the offense? I think many would argue yes. But ultimately, what does this look like for the Cleveland Browns? We don't know. We don't know yet. I'm not even sure that they know. I'm sure that there's some type of plan in place. There's some type of roadmap blueprint for what Ken Dorsey is going to be in Cleveland. But right now, we don't know. Your overall initial thoughts on the hiring of Ken Dorsey, and what do you think this is going to mean for this offense going forward?
Yeah, first, Allie, Top Dog Hanford wanted to say hello to you. I was on his show earlier today, the Hanford Dixon Show, and we got into this. We got into this whole Ken Dorsey, and I will tell you, Hanford and I were on both, we're opposite ends on this. He thought it was a dumb hire. He didn't like the hire. He thought, what are we doing here? Like, what, like, but he also said, hey, he's our guy now. I got to support him and let's get behind this, right? Let's see what he's all about. I took the approach because he kind of, and Allie, you tell me what you think about this, but his point was there's a lot of recycling in the NFL among coordinators. It's one of those things that kind of happens, right? This guy bounces here, bounces there. And he didn't understand the hire based on, thinking some of those other candidates were out there that were better. Now, I came at the other opposite side of that and I said, hey, look, you had someone like Ken Dorsey and a Kellen Moore and these guys, like were they good candidates or good people to be on the job? Well, the Philadelphia Eagles hired obviously Kellen Moore, right? They saw the wherewithal that he brought. And then I said, well, a lot of times, there was and where we kind of went back and forth and bantering on this was, look, they hired, they fired him mid-season roughly, something like that.
Yeah.
Ken Dorsey got fired, and I said, well, look at this. They weren't exactly a juggernaut down the stretch after they fired Ken Dorsey, and in fact, they kind of muddled through the second half of the season, and they were a better football team offensively the first part of the season. And I said, quite honestly, this is my belief, and I want your opinion on this, but I think sometimes offensive coordinators get let go to get the pressure and the limelight and the spotlight off of. Eventually, as his offensive coordinator, he started doing this, right? So yes, I am a believer in Ken Dorsey, and I think it actually is a good hire.
Mhm.
But I know there's some people out there scratching their head, but I think it's a good hire. And obviously, the organization saw a lot in this. And I do think you may see Stefanski give up some of the play calling. I really think that this could be that pivotal year where he tries to be more of a full-time coach and focus on, because I think the Browns have to be all in next year, like really all in, because this year is an asterisk with the injuries, but I really think the Browns need to be all in next year. But
Yeah.
Allie, that was a long-winded
Yeah.
answer to your question, but yeah.
No, that's okay. You know what? Hey, long-winded is good on postseason shows when there's not a ton to talk about. So that's a
Okay,
good
well, I
thing.
got another 20 minutes. No, it's
Yeah, keep going. Keep going. You got a microphone and a platform. Let's hear it. Okay, here's my philosophy. And I want to start before we even get into the Ken Dorsey situation on why I think it was the right move to move off of AVP and some of the offensive staff, some Mitchell, some of these guys, and bringing in fresh perspective. I think when you are 4 years as a head coach, going into your fourth year, and very, very, very few of your coaching staff, especially on the offensive side, they are not getting pulled. They are not getting pulled for interviews, head coaching interviews, offensive coordinator interviews. Something is not right then. That tells me that there's a lot of guys that are complacent, they're comfortable doing what they're doing, and it's completely necessary, especially in such a quick moving league like the NFL. Things change so quickly.
Yeah.
Ever changing. You've got to have guys that are getting basically picked from other teams, and I think you have to have that. That's kind of a necessary evil where you hate to see some of these guys go, but it's a good thing ultimately. So I think it brings in some fresh perspective, some new philosophy, which I think is really needed. Look at what they've got going over in Indianapolis with Shane Steichen. He was a guy that came in. There was some question marks around him and what he was going to be able to do with this team. And you look at Indianapolis this year with Gardner Minshew and what they were able to get out of him. When the Browns played the Colts, even though we came away with a win in that game, offensively, they completely carved up this Browns defense, who at the time was like peak of their powers. I know that the Browns finished with a really good defense, but at that time we were talking, this is a historic defense. Right. I think with 4 years, no churn, especially on your offensive offensive staff, I think that's a little bit concerning. So to bring in fresh perspective is needed and required. And I appreciate them going out and getting a guy like Ken Dorsey who has experience. Now, no, he's not the sexiest name on the list. He's not the flashiest guy. No, I don't think he's going to be a head coach next year. But I think that this is a really good stepping stone for his career and who he is. Let's go back. Let's look at what he's done. He's played in the NFL, not a ton of experience. Obviously Browns fans, you know him. He spent a couple of years here in Cleveland, started out in San Francisco.
He's on the
He's
jersey.
on the jersey. He's on the list. Starts out in San Francisco. He was a 7th-round pick. It's traded to the Cleveland Browns. From there, spends time in the Canadian Football League. And then he got into coaching like very quickly. Spent time in Carolina during kind of Cam Newton's heyday, his MVP season. Was on some really good teams with the Panthers. Took a really weird year and went to Florida International as their like assistant athletic director. I don't that was kind of weird. But then gets back into it with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, he had met McDermott in Carolina, then goes to Buffalo, becomes the quarterback's coach. Ultimately, works his way up as the offensive play caller after Dable leaves. So that's who kind of he is, what he does. But you mentioned it, Dustin, his development of these quarterbacks. He's been around some really, really good ones, and some that are kind of similar in the sense of what we have here. Very, very athletic guys that can make plays with their feet, but also have a really big arm. So think Cam Newton, think Josh Allen.
Yep.
I think Deshaun Watson falls into that category to some extent. So being able to get the most out of Deshaun Watson in this quarterback room, let alone the offense, but being able to elevate Deshaun Watson, get the most out of him, I think is the number one reason that you bring him in. I mean, Ken Dorsey's kind of track record with the quarterbacks he's worked with, I think, speaks enough to why the Browns brought him in. Whether or not they relinquish play calling duties to him, I don't know. I think you can really just focus in on what he's able to do in the quarterback room.
Yeah, and here's the truth of the matter. Like you said, Cam Newton's the Josh Allen's of the world. We have a big investment in Deshaun Watson, and clearly that needs to be the square focus with a healthy Deshaun Watson from
Yeah.
week 1 next year, and hopefully, knock on wood, few weeks in, healthy Nick Chubb and all these other guys. I mean, you really have to be on all cylinders next year. And when you have something like Ken Dorsey that's worked with these type of quarterbacks, I think the Browns see that Ken can get the most out of these guys, right?
Yeah.
And so, I look forward to seeing what he can do. And honestly, I mean, I didn't never think about that, but you brought up a great perspective. Like I use the analogy like when the Browns used to fire head coaches, there wasn't like a line at the door to go hire that Browns head coach at the next NFL level. Like, and I think you brought up a really good point with some of these assistants. They were just not clamoring to get those interviews, right? They're just not.
Mhm.
And I use the example of winning organizations. Earlier today, the player development guy just got hired as a GM of the Los Angeles Chargers. Again,
Mhm.
from a winning culture, a winning organization to try to get a better winning culture in another organization. Winning breeds winning. So
Yeah, it really does. And also with AVP, I don't know if you saw, but he is interviewing for the offensive coordinator down in Tampa. So sometimes the stories really just write themselves. They really,
I did
they
not see
really
that.
do.
I did not see that, but I was like, oh, Baker,
Uh,
Baker, here we go.
oh, they really do. It's a fun story. Um, Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you are doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition, and it's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. We're going to go ahead and go out on the Medical Minute. Thankfully, not a ton to talk about with Dr. David Ullery. But before we do so, a quick word from our friends over at Lorello Vineyards. This Medical Minute is brought to you by Lorello Vineyards.
Everybody, my name's Kim Lorello, and my husband and I, Larry, started Lorello Vineyards over 21 years ago. We're a small cantina nestled in the Grand River Valley in Geneva, Ohio. Our winery consists of 2 beautiful tasting rooms, and we have 2 rooms that can transform into party rooms inside. Our menu here at Lorello's is home cooking. We have wood-fired Tuscan pizzas, paninis, salads, and several appetizers. We have award-winning wines that have won medals internationally, nationally, and locally. In the summer and springtime, we have a beautiful outdoor patio that also we have live entertainment. We also have entertainment sporadically through the entire year inside during our cool fall and winter months. Additionally, outside in the summer, we have a beautiful tent that can house several guests for a private function. We hope to see you soon, and if you want any more information on Lorello Vineyards, you can go to our website at www.lorellovineyards.com. We hope to see you soon.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and bring Dr. David Ullery on to the show. How's it going, David?
Great. How are you guys? Not muted this time.
Not muted. I was just gonna say that was really good. Anytime you come on, it always throws me off a little bit because I can hear you in the other room, and then I can also hear you in my ear. So I have to like do the noise canceling on my headphones so
Yes,
I don't
gotta
hear you
turn that
twice
on.
because there is a little bit of a delay because it's a little weird.
Uh-huh.
I'm waiting for the time that David is in one location, you're in some work trip somewhere else, and we're all coming from 3 different places in the country.
It'll happen.
That'll
It'll
be
happen
fun.
eventually.
I like it.
It will be fun. David, not a ton to talk about as it pertains to injuries surrounding the Cleveland Browns, and ultimately that is a good thing. But something happened last night in the NFC Championship game that I think both kind of, for the both of us, we noticed it and kind of just started talking about it on the couch. I forget who it was. Was it Dre Greenlaw, or you'll correct me here in a minute, but a really bad stinger. So I just wanted to talk about that because we see it fairly often in the league where guys go out with a stinger, and a lot of people don't know what that is, myself included to some
Good
degree.
point.
So I want to turn it over to you. Like, what exactly is a stinger?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It was Dre Greenlaw, and we both saw it when it happened, and he was on the ground for a little bit and kind of writhing around in pain, and so we thought it was something pretty serious. But the instant he stood up or got on a knee, you could see him grabbing his arm and kind of shaking his hand out and really like grabbing his fingers back and forth like he's trying to wake it up, like after you lay on it for too long and it falls asleep. And effectively, that is what a stinger is. Essentially, there's usually a direct impact, usually during tackling, where someone's like when they make a tackle. Let's say with Dre in this instance, he went to make a tackle and his right shoulder or his left shoulder hit whoever he was tackling. And what happened is his head is going one way, his arm ends up going the other way, and it stretches all the structures that go from your neck down into your arm that innervate the arm that provide sensation and motor control. And so it can be a pretty scary phenomenon because those nerves are essentially impacted and kind of shocked almost to where they stop working, and you have numbness, you have tingling, and you can't move your arm. And it can be kind of, for the first time experiencing or not knowing what it is, it can be quite scary just because you think, oh my gosh, like, why is my arm not working? Is there something going on? But essentially those nerves are just either impacted and have kind of a shock effect to them, or they're stretched a little bit with a similar thing. And, the medical term for it is a brachial plexus traction injury or a neuropraxia. And so, you mentioned we see them pretty often. In fact, there's a study that's been published online ahead of printing in Sports Health, literally coming out next month, I think. And it looked at the incidence of stingers in the NFL over 5 years, from 2015 to 2019. Interestingly, I guess there's a centralized league-wide electronic medical record system, so an EMR, that the league uses. So I'm sure all the team doctors have access to it. All their players are in it, and that's pretty cool because then they can record incidents like this along with other injuries, and it gives us a lot of good data and information for studying this unique demographic of people who are high level, high energy athletes. And so they looked at players, like I said, from 2015 to 2019. Over that time frame, a total of 691 in-game stingers occurred. So what that comes out to is 138 per year. So to give you an idea of how many times this happens in the NFL during the regular season, it's about almost 140 times. So it's not a small amount. I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of stingers to occur just over the course of one season. Overall, for any NFL player who's playing, their average risk of having a stinger during the season is 3.74%. So it's not a very big chance from a player perspective, and it's also not zero. So, I mean, essentially, 3 in every 100 players will experience a stinger at some point during the season. I mean, that's 3 players per 2 teams, essentially, at least for active rosters. And so it happens quite significantly. And then the other thing they kind of looked at was incidents among specific positions. And as you can kind of imagine, running backs and linebackers experience the most stingers. And so for the NFL overall, they say they kind of calculated to look at it in player plays. So it happened in 12 of 100,000 player plays. It's kind of a weird way of looking at things. But for running backs and linebackers, there's greater than 15. And so essentially, those athletes that are in kind of the trenches or kind of in the mid level who are going to be making those impact hits coming up to the line of scrimmage, coming up, a medium to high speed and making that tackle or that impact or putting their putting their shoulder down to try and run through someone, they're the ones that experience the most stingers. And then just kind of wrapping it up among stingers and patients or players who got them, 75% of them did not miss any game time. And what they mean by time essentially is extended time between weeks. Certainly you got to come out for a couple plays, get evaluated. Once your sensation returns and you're able to move things, you can get right back on the field because we know that this is a transient, non-structural issue that just was temporary and it's not going to cause any long-term problems. They did say that those that resulted in time lost from football activities, the mean time missed to do this specific injury was just under 5 days, ranging anywhere from 3 to 6 days on average. And so, we talked about earlier this season, center Ian Posich had a stinger and he was out for a couple of games because of it. So I think he was definitely an outlier on the spectrum of this sort of injury because it's pretty rare to miss any sort of extended time, as this study showed. And so for him to be out for multiple weeks after a stinger tells me that the stretch of the nerve or the impact must have been so intense that it probably actually bruised the nerve to where there was some sort of, not necessarily structural damage, but just it lost blood flow for a second, or it stretched a little bit to where the nerve needed to heal. So he was still experiencing symptoms even after the next couple of days.
So what is that, just in terms of recovery and treatment, like what do you do for that? You just kind of let it ride?
Yeah, in that situation, there's not a lot. I'm sure he probably got an MRI. Anytime there's lingering symptoms, they're going to look at your neck or the cervical spine, as well as the brachial plexus itself, which is all those nerves going to the arm. And so they probably got an MRI of both his neck and the brachial plexus to make sure there wasn't actually a nerve that was torn or something else going on. And so it probably, what I would imagine, showed is some edema or fluid or swelling around the brachial plexus or that section of nerves. And so once you see that, I think you can confirm that this was a more significant injury, but there's still really not much to do for it. Now, if he's having a lot of pain related to it, there's nerve pain medication that he can take to just reduce those symptoms. But apart from that, when it comes to if he's having numbness, tingling, or weakness in any of his muscles, it's something that you just need to give time to allow the nerves to heal. And nerves are very finicky. They can take anywhere from, in his experience, a couple weeks to heal to months to years, just depending on where the level of the injury was and how significant it was. And so it's just a matter of, checking him every day, seeing if his symptoms are improving. And once they're gone, should be good to go to return to activity as he was.
I was going to say, I was on interesting enough, I had, me and my father were in a head-on collision one time in a car wreck, like a pretty traumatic car wreck. And after the initial, shock of being hit head on, I literally had no feeling down my arm. And I literally started doing that whole thing. And the guys in the ambulance, I mean, it's funny, they described it as a stinger. And I'm like, I think of a stinger as football, like you said, and the ambulance, the medic said, "Oh, you probably have a stinger, and you shaking it is trying to get that feeling back." But that would make sense because I got jolted all over the car in an extreme fashion to where my arm did that. So that actually makes a whole lot of sense for your explanation of that, because that literally is what happened to me in that head-on collision, because my body got jolted in such a radical way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, David, you mentioned like running backs, linebackers, the types of players that are really, making some insane, just physical plays. Even Postage, your center, is it just kind of got twisted up the wrong way, or so much force, blocking? Like, it's just kind of a not somebody you necessarily expect to see when you're taking a look at a roster or a depth chart and saying, yeah, this is who it's going to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know the exact play it happened on. I'm sure if we went back and watched the game during which it occurred, we'd probably be able to catch it because he probably came out right after it happened or soon thereafter. And so it could have been a play where maybe he was pulling and getting out in space and running downfield a little bit and ended up either falling and kind of landing on that part of his body kind of in this position, or even just trying to get to the second level if he was getting in a run block situation. And again, whether he got tripped up or if someone hit him and made contact as well. So you're right. I mean, definitely not as common on the offensive line as this study showed, but I don't think there's really any player on the field who's necessarily immune to it, just because at some point or another, everybody on the football field is going to be running and likely impacting another player. And so part of it is just right place at the right time in the right position, but definitely more rare, I would think, for anybody on the offensive line to go through something with it like this, especially something as severe as he had.
Yeah. I have a question for you. What is more stressful to you, watching the Lions in the NFC Championship game, or planning our wedding.
I thought you were going to say watching the Lions or performing surgery. Either way, the answer would be
Or that
watching the
too.
Lions.
Or
Yeah,
that
nope.
too.
Either way, it's watching the Lions in the NFC Championship game. Planning the wedding for me is a lot of fun because we're doing it together and it's something that we're really looking forward to. And even if there's some stressful things going on, like it's still fun because at the end of the day, this is like a celebration of us and something that we get to do together with our family. Surgery, I love doing, and yeah, it's a high stress environment, but I'm very comfortable with most of the things I do now. But the Lions in my lifetime have been in the NFC Championship game once, and I was still in diapers when that happened, and so I don't remember it. And so, certainly, as you know, I was too nervous to sit still watching this game. So in between snaps, I was
let me
deep
paint the
cleaning the
picture.
house.
Let me paint the picture. I wish I had it to show you guys up on the screen right now. Actually, I can. Just give me a moment. I have to send it to myself. So I have to do it while I'm thinking of this. So I look up during the game. Obviously, David is a big time Lions fan and very stressed during this game, as we would all be as Browns fans. And
Especially in the
instead of
third
just
quarter.
sitting there, yes, especially instead of just sitting there and watching the game, he was deep cleaning the house. So he was vacuuming, put all of the chairs up on the table, vacuuming under it.
That's nerves.
And then during the fourth quarter, he's outside washing the windows. He was washing the windows on the exterior of the house. So as soon as he's come through, I will display these.
Well,
first one here. Hang on, I have to show our visual watchers here. Stand by. Here's the first one of him vacuuming. All of the chairs are up on the table. Dude, and then the other one is him washing the windows. He's literally Windexing during the game. So
he can't watch.
That was crazy.
I tell you what. So Ali, I can understand David's stressness because when I would watch the Browns Packers games, when a field goal happens, I literally turn my back to the television and I tell everybody, just tell me if it goes through. I can't watch it. I don't want to watch the field goal. And this was to tie the game, I think it was against the Ravens or something, or no, to win against the Ravens. I was like, I can't watch the field goal. Just tell me if it goes in. So I understand your nervousness. I will tell you this. I have a little bit of, if you want to expand the medical minute a little bit here. I was watching I was over playing poker, Allie, with our friend Jason Toth, as you know, tunes into our show. Actually walked away with $50, so that wasn't terrible. I thought that wasn't that. Yeah. So we split the pot at the end of the night because I'm like, I gotta go home and I gotta let Bronco out. We gotta get this over with. So he's like, fine, we'll split the pot. But I will tell you this: as a Browns fan and being a Niners, I have a lot of Niner fans in the West. And when Dan Campbell went forward on 4th and 2 and didn't get it, I said, that may just change the entire momentum of this football game. And my God, did it not change the entire complexity of that football game. And I said, this is where things like the Cleveland Browns haunt you because you're that close to the Super Bowl and you don't kick that 3 points. At the end of the game, you're probably hoping you had those 3 because you're going into overtime. And I got to say, I know Twitter blew up when he did that and didn't get it and all those things. But I was like, and then I will tell you this, Allie. Tell me about this from a Browns perspective. And I want your opinion on this, David. Then all of us Browns fans were sitting there and we did this. Do we really want the Lions to go to the Super Bowl? Like this was like because a lot of Browns fans are rooting for the Lions. And then a lot of people were like, if that happens, we are the only original franchise to never make it to the Super Bowl. And then we're stuck with 2 expansion franchises. And everybody's like, yeah, I don't think I can live with that.
Well, here's the thing. The Lions, for a long time, up until 2015, 2016, were one of the only teams, if not the only, to have gone completely defeated in the regular season. And then comes the Cleveland Browns. They do it. So here's the thing. If the Lions were to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, that just means that the Browns were going to do it the next year. So I can live with that. I can live with that.
Or now the Browns can go to the Super Bowl next year and the Lions can win it in 2025. How's that? We can do.
Yeah,
get
we'll
you
swap
guys-
roles. So Browns do it first this time.
Now, so David, I have a
Fine.
question. David, I have a question about this. Did you see the comment? I mean, because we know Dan Campbell's a very, very truth guy. He just rips the Band-Aid off. Did you see the quote that came out that he literally said to the guys after the game, that might have been our window. That might have been our only chance to get to the Super Bowl. I think that's kind of eye-opening and somewhat refreshing that a coach would be that honest with his players, because at that point you're also telling your players and risking them, the ones that are free agents, like, I'm out, right? Like, I'm going to go find another opportunity. But I want both of your perspectives on that, because that's a pretty raw comment, especially after a very emotional game, to make a comment like that. Like,
Yeah, I'm going back to what you said, or the going for it on fourth down issue. I don't know. It's been Dan Campbell's MO since he's been in Detroit. I have
I agree.
really no problems with it. He's very good at it. The Lions are successful at it. And, from a number standpoint, they say to go, and then everyone argues, don't be a robot, don't look at just the numbers. But ultimately, if you consider the position they were in, the success they've had in running those plays throughout the season, and then what their kicker can do in those situations, it was a no-brainer. The Lions going for it on fourth down over the course of the season were 55% successful. Michael Badgley from 48 plus yards was kicking 33%. He is not a good distance kicker. And so even, saying they lost by 3 and could have gone to overtime, they took their chances on what gave them the better odds of converting and winning and scoring. So I have less problems with those plays compared to other issues that popped up throughout the game, whether it's dropped passes on third and fourth down conversions from a receiver who normally has fairly reliable hands, whether it's fumbling the ball on the 20-yard line, running the ball with Amon-Ra St. Brown on 3rd and 2. I really didn't like that play, because you have David Montgomery who will just bulldoze people, and you try to get too cute and outthink your opponent when they aren't stopping the run. The whole first half, the Lions were gouging them for 7, 8, 10 yards a run. And so there were a lot of other things I think that went wrong prior to going for it on fourth down, including, even the cornerback, the ball going right through his hands, bouncing off his face mask, and Brandon Ayuk making the catch of the year. I mean, there were so many other things that went wrong where going for it on fourth down, I don't have much of a problem with, just because it's what the Lions have done. And Dan Campbell actually kind of changed gears at the end of the first half. We talked about it, Allie. He ended up kicking the field goal to go up 3 scores. I mean, you're up 17 points at that time, and that's a pretty big lead to overcome. In fact, I saw a tweet that said that was the biggest or the largest deficit that has been overcome in the NFC Championship game. And so he made the right decision there instead of going for a touchdown and kicking the field goal and taking the points. But ultimately, those other situations, I mean, I can't fault the man, because he's had success doing it.
The only one that I still don't understand, David, is sure, go for it. That's what they've done. That's their brand. I think Greg Olson even said, like, the reason that they're here is because they've done things like that this season, which totally understand. But what I absolutely hated was the play call to run it. I think it was David Montgomery running it and then having to use a timeout there.
Right. You're right. That might be the most egregious of all of them.
Yeah, because then you lose essentially 25 to 30 some seconds towards the end of the game, which had you have received it, I don't know. I just think that the play calling was a little rough. But Dustin, to answer your question, I actually think, like, I appreciate what he said. His candor, you can certainly appreciate, because one thing about Dan Campbell is obviously a player's coach, real guy. He can say some off the wall stuff, but you appreciate it, especially when he can back it up, because it's true. This may have been their only chance. I mean, in the NFL, what's it stand for? Not for long. Things change so rapidly. I mean, it's not to say that they're never going to get there again or they're not going to have success, but doing what they did and how they did it to get there may not be able to be replicated.
Yeah, and David, to your point, I don't know of any other football team that I root for that gets too cute on plays. I don't know about you, Allie, but I've never seen another team that gets too cute.
Yeah, I can't relate to that one at all. No, I can't relate to that at all whatsoever. David, I do have a question from our friend Larry Lorello. He said, Doc, I am heartbroken for the Lions. What should I take?
That's a great question. Tonight, I've prescribed Allie and myself a little cocktail known as a paper plane. And so if you're interested in something a little off the beaten path from what you're used to with Lorello, a paper plane is a pretty good place to start. Made with equal parts of bourbon, lemon juice, Amaro, and Campari. Or no,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, Aperol, not Campari, Aperol. It eases the pain quite well, and that might be a good route to take and explore.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. David, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Go
Go
Browns.
Browns.
Go Browns.
All right, that is Dr. David Ullery. He is an orthopedic surgeon in the U.S. Navy. So he is qualified to talk about stingers and the Lions. He's qualified. So we like having him on. That was brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards. Before we get into it a little bit more, here, Dustin, we just want to tell you about what we've got going on in March. Here's a quick word from our friends, Seaside
There,
Events.
Browns fans, pack your bags for the ultimate dog pound at sea party on the amazing Independence of the Seas in March of 2024 as we embark on a 5-day all-inclusive Caribbean cruise. Spend time with your favorite Browns alumni like Josh Cribbs, Eric Metcalf, Webster Slaughter, and many more. Presented by Seaside Events. Cabins are selling fast, so book yours now. Visit BrownsFanCruise.com or call 216-284-6472 today.
Look, I don't know about you, but I like saving money. And Dustin, I know that's why you went shopping at Cleveland Furniture Company. Get all of your furniture needs at the Cleveland Furniture Company. Guys, they buy in bulk direct from the factory so they can save you money. They are a true family-owned and operated business. This next segment is brought to you from the couch.
From the Couch is brought to you by the Cleveland Furniture Company.
All right, let's get into some NFL awards. Our predictions for who we think is going to get what this postseason. Let's start out. Let me pull up my notes here just a second. I still have the picture of David pulled up washing a window. That was crazy. I look over and he's outside wiping down a window while the
That's
Lions run. So
hilarious.
that was something to see. Let's start out with our predictions for the NFL. So this is for the entire NFL. Let's start with MVP. Dustin, who do you got as your league MVP?
This is a tough one because I think I know who a lot of people would have picked. Is this who I think is going to win, or who I think should win? Or where do you want to go with this route on this one?
We think let's say yours, like who you.
Yeah. So
who,
after all the games are played and the dust is settled, honestly, you know who I would give it to? I'd give it to Brock Purdy of all people. The way Brock Purdy played in that second half of that football game was phenomenal. And what he's meant to this organization this year to get him to the 1 seed. I know Lamar Jackson was kind of the sexy pick pre-playoffs, but I'm gonna address the elephant in the room. I think Lamar Jackson is 1-4 in the playoffs now. Brock Purdy is in the Super Bowl. And guess what? He hasn't been in the league nearly as long as Lamar Jackson has. So I don't know. I think I like Brock Purdy for most valuable player.
Okay.
Will he get it? I don't know, but I certainly think he's deserving of it based on what he's done this year in his body of work.
Look, I definitely think he is within the realm of possibilities. I think that, for a while, this award was kind of clear and who was going to get it. It was Tyreek Hill. Like he's not even a quarterback and he's going to win this award. Obviously he goes down and then it was a little kind of weird from there. Look, I mean, Brock Purdy, he's got 4,200 yards on the season, which is 5th in the league, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 64.7 QBR, or excuse me, 72.7 QBR. I am going to give my league MVP to Lamar Jackson, and I know that he's kind of the front runner right now. To be truthful, I don't think that there was a clear and obvious number one MVP of the league this season. I mean, Lamar, 3,600 yards, 3,678 yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The reason I'm giving it to him is, watching him towards the end of the season and what he's done with kind of what he's had on his team. They're decimated with injuries, as they kind of are every year. And what he was able to accomplish, man, watching him play is unbelievable. Watching him yesterday, there were so many times where I said, I've never seen anything like that. That is insane. So I'm gonna go with Lamar here for my league MVP. Although it does pay me to say, defensive player of the year. This is an easy one for me, Dustin. I'm sure it is for you too.
Well, last 9 out of 10 years, the writers have aligned with the Associated Press, and I just love when I post something positive about Myles Garrett, and literally I get a bunch of trolls on her page that are all Pittsburgh fans ready to just anoint Watt as the most valuable player, and it just boggles me. But obviously, Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah,
The
it's
type of
Miles.
season, the season he had, I think you have to go here with this. That's my
You have to. I mean, 33 tackles on the season, 14 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. But I think one thing that I want to talk about here that so many people blow out of proportion is sacks and what that equates to. It's kind of a weighted stat and really what this award is based off of. Sure, TJ Watt can do a lot of really good things. He's a very good football player. I'm not going to take that away from him. He's got the numbers to back it up. But all things considered, let's say you've got, two offensive lines going up against TJ Watt and one going up against Myles Garrett. What that offense has to do to adjust and just accommodate for Myles Garrett to defend him ultimately is what they're doing in some capacity. What he does pre-snap to opposing offenses is, first off, you're not going to see it in the stats because you can't account for that. But what Myles does to completely influence offensive philosophy and keep opposing offensive coordinators up at night, man, you can't measure that. What he does to kind of just mess with teams is unlike anything that I've ever seen.
Well, I mean, I think to McVay's point, you kept me up all week, dude. Like literally, like you kept me awake at night having to deal with your ass on Sunday, right? I mean, and that's the head coach. That's not even the defensive coordinator, right? That's
Yep.
the head coach saying, "Hey, you kept me up this week trying to figure out how I was going to contain you to keep us in this football game." So yeah,
Uh-huh. All right, let's go with Offensive Player of the Year. Who you going?
offensive player of the year. Well, see that I'd give to Lamar Jackson just on pure numbers. I mean, he just was explosive this year. But yeah, I'd give that one to Lamar for offensive player of the year. I mean, you could give it to Patrick Mahomes, but this is a down year for him. So I think this is one where I could give the nod to Lamar in this situation.
Why would you? Okay, what's your philosophy on that? Like, why are you going MVP for Brock and then Lamar for Offensive Player of the Year? Just talk me through your process there.
Because I look at most valuable player in the sense of what, like the true term, most valuable player. Like
Okay.
what did, like he literally, I just, the way that Brock Purdy played and the way he, under many types of situations, got them over the hump to get them to the Super Bowl, and the way he played throughout the season lent me to like he was clearly the most valuable player for them, right? And
I actually I'm not completely arguing with here, but I would have actually have switched it. Like in my mind, the 49ers are who they are because of Christian McCaffrey, because of
oh,
Deebo Samuel,
that's
because
good
of their
too.
defense. Brock Purdy is just within the system doing what he does. Lamar Jackson is the reason that the Ravens got to where they are. He's throwing to Devin Duvernay, and I mean, obviously Odell Beckham Jr. and
Yeah.
Zay Flowers. Got some guys, but I would have actually had that swapped. But for my most valuable, or excuse me, Offensive Player of the Year, I was between Tyreek and Christian McCaffrey. I am going to go with Christian here. 272 carries for 1,459 yards, 14 touchdowns, which is fourth in the NFL. I mean, he's insane. Tyreek, if he didn't get hurt, I think he's number one for league MVP. 119
Sure.
receptions for almost 1,800 yards. That's crazy. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. If he would have been healthy, he probably would have cleared 2,000 yards on the season. So
Yeah.
that's my philosophy there. What about Rookie of the Year?
I don't think this is a hard one, man. Like this one for a rookie quarterback to
Yeah.
lead his team to the playoffs, CJ Stroud. I mean, I don't think it was even a second. I would maybe give it to Jalen Carter on defense for the Eagles. But I mean, as far as a true rookie of the year, I
Yeah.
think you have to give it to CJ Stroud and what he has put up. I mean, if you had him on your fantasy team, as I did this year, as one of your quarterbacks, you loved him because he put up uh, video game type of stats as a
Yep.
rookie. And by the way, not surrounded with the greatest amount of talent and depth
No.
at wide receiver and all that, right? And for
If he
him
didn't get
to,
hurt, he is potential league MVP.
oh,
If
100%,
he
right.
doesn't go down, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so CJ by far would be the rookie of the year for me. Yeah.
100%. I agree. And actually, I agree with you, Jalen Carter, defensive rookie of the year. But this is talking about CJ here, to be able to lead your team to the playoffs and then win in the playoffs against the best defense in the league. Look, got to give so much credit to the kid. And also was hurt for a portion of the season. So obviously we don't like that he took us out of it, but he was really fun to watch this season. Okay, what about comeback player of the year?
So this is funny. I don't know if you saw some of the comments that with Joe Flacco making his rounds around the media. I thought it was kind of funny. He goes, "I'm not sure why I'm getting comeback player of the year. I'm coming back from being old and just not playing for a few months." I was like, he has the best like quotes. Like, I just want to take like all of Joe Flacco's quotes because he's just funny when he makes a comment. You know, here's the thing. Hamlin's clearly probably going to win, right? Because here's a guy that nearly died on the field. Well, technically did die on the field, comes back, makes a play. Now, has he really been the player, it's like a guy that's blown up stats on the field this year? No. But the fact that he did come from it. If it wasn't for that, actually, and who I would probably give it to, I'd probably give it to Baker Mayfield. Because Baker Mayfield literally goes from leaving the Cleveland Browns to playing on two teams and then leading a team to the second round of the playoffs. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but he's not in Cleveland anymore, but that is a comeback player of the year. Like,
look, I'm giving mine to Baker Mayfield. I was just about to get on here and say, look, I know this is going to be popular, but frankly, I don't care. Look at this. In 2022, with both teams, the Rams and the Panthers, 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. This year with Tampa Bay, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's stark.
Leads team to the second round.
I think he was great.
With not immense talent around him other than, Evans and a couple guys.
Look, they were a good offense, but I wouldn't say that they were like lights out. You didn't fear them necessarily. No. So I think he gets some serious consideration. And then last but not least, coach of the year. What are you doing?
Here is, this is not a homer pick in any way, but I don't know. The fact that 5 starting quarterbacks, the amount of injuries this football team, like this team is going to be.
It's the only answer. It is the only answer.
How does this team get to the playoffs? How do they get to 11-6? Right, unless this coach has them galvanized and believing in themselves, no matter what. Next man up. Let's go. We got to get to the playoffs. I got to give it to Coach Stefanski. I don't think there's any other answer here.
No, that is the answer. That is my answer. I don't know who else would look. Of course you've got some other guys that fall into consideration.
The Houston coach.
I was going to say D'Amico Ryans. You can throw Dan Campbell in there. You got some guys that are worth mentioning, of course. But given what happened with this team and the adversity that they overcame, and the amount of it that they overcame, it's Kevin Stefanski. It really is.
It would be insurmountable to most football teams, if not all.
Yeah.
That would happen.
Yep. It absolutely is. Dustin, real quick, why don't you tell our listeners about our friends at the Barley House?
Hey guys, the Barley House. By the way, thanks for throwing a party and welcoming me to Cleveland Friday night. That was a lot of fun. Kathleen, I see you're watching the show. The 2023 Fan of the Year. She came down. We had a handful of other folks come down and hang out with us. It was really cool to finally meet Kathleen in person, not just virtually. And by the way, you got to vote for her. Go to her page, vote for her. Kathleen, if you can drop a comment in here and tell people where they can go with a link, how to vote for you, that'd be great. But no, it was fun. But it's a great place to hang out and do all those wonderful things. And we may have some shows coming from there in the near future. On a Wednesday night, I may be coming, live from there. We're trying to work those details out, but go check them out. They're great year-round, great people.
Awesome. There you have it. Real quick, a quick word from our friends over at Circle K.
Get ready for a sizzling sensation that's about to heat up your taste buds. Circle K is bringing you a hot deal this football season. Introducing Circle K's Hot Chicken Wings. And the best part, the price is as hot as the wings themselves. Pick up 6 wings for just $5.99 at your local Circle K today. So what are you waiting for? Gather your friends, your family, and anyone else who craves the ultimate wing experience. Circle K, where every deal is hotter than ever before. Here we go, brownies. Only at Circle K.
All right, question for you, real quick. Kathy just dropped her link here. How
There
you
you go.
can vote for her for Fan of the Year. So please be sure that you head on over to the NFL.com/honors/Fan of the Year. Go check her out and please give her a vote. My question to you is, having watched the AFC Championship, the NFC Championship game, Dustin, we watch very talented teams. We see teams kind of at an elite level. And you could say, there's some teams like the Chiefs that kind of maybe sleepwalked their way to this point into the Super Bowl, and how envious we are of the talent that they have and just their ability to do that when it's so hard for teams like the Browns to get there and to have that type of success. So,
Or any other team for that matter.
any other
Right.
team, any other team. But to see some really talented teams, I mean, obviously the Ravens were immensely talented this year. Lions were great. Niners are, just another beast. So I want to ask you, are the teams that we watched play on Sunday, do you think that they're that much farther ahead than the Browns currently are? Or do you think that a lot of luck, a lot of injuries, we know what this year was for the Browns. But just want to have that conversation. Do you look at some of these teams and say, hey, they are light years ahead of the Cleveland Browns? Or do you look at these games that we watched and say, we could have been here, we could have done this?
I want to say no, and not only no, but hell no. And I'll give you the reason why, in my opinion, on this. A healthy Deshaun Watson, a healthy offensive line, and a Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford 1-2 punch at running back, and the wide receiver unit for this Cleveland Browns could have played or beat anybody in this league on the AFC side of the ball to get us to the Super Bowl. A healthy Browns team would have been a threat for anybody. The fact that everybody said we don't want to play the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs because of their defense, right? And obviously we turned the ball over, had the 3 turnovers, which that kind of turned into what it did in that Houston game. Yeah, I think we are very close to a lot of these other football teams. And the only X factor is someone like Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, because he is just a little above everybody else, right? Like, he is Patrick Mahomes. He is today's version of Tom Brady. I'll say it, just based on the way and his consistency of how he's playing. But no, I
Yeah.
don't think we're that far off. Do I think the Browns could have went in and gave a game to Buffalo? Yes, just like the Kansas City Chiefs did. Do I think we could have went on the road and scared the Kansas City Chiefs? Yes. But guess what? It's going to come down to turnovers. But I think a healthy Nick Chubb running the ball and taking the, because guess what the Lions were doing? That's exactly what I watched that game. And I don't know if you kind of felt that, Allie, but I was literally watching the Lions. I'm like, this is what the Cleveland Browns do. They dink and dunk to their tight ends and they run the ball down your throat. And they're doing it to the San Francisco 49ers, and they're up, what, 24-7? Like, that's what they're doing. And they just got away from it a little bit in the second half. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the Browns, what the
Yeah.
Lions are doing. So
Yeah, no, you're right. I agree with you. I don't think that the Browns are far off. I look at every single team in the league. We've said this every week of this podcast during the season. This Browns team can beat anybody in the league, and they can also lose to anybody in the league. But I do firmly believe that
when they get cute with
yeah,
their play
yeah, we know what that's like. But playing up to the talent of your opponent is absolutely something that the Browns have done this season, and I think they're not far off. In fact, I think that this Browns team, when healthy, and I want to make that abundantly clear, if they would have been healthy all season and would have been able to gel the way that they were, we saw them kind of coming together before it just fell apart. Yeah. Anybody. You're here. You can do this. So I think that should give you hope going into this postseason, going into this off season where we're going to talk about all of everything as it pertains to the Cleveland Browns, but really going into this next season. But I want to go back to the comment that Dan Campbell made in his press availability. This may have been our only shot because it is so real. Things change and happen so fast in the NFL, so fast. We know that as Browns fans, having watched this team this year and the amount of injuries and adversity that they had to face and overcome, anything is possible. But you've only got a short window. So I think going into this season, you're very, very hopeful as a Browns fan. You know, this is a great football team. Yeah. I think that they're only going to get better this offseason. But look, I don't think you don't have a 5-year window here. You really need to start capitalizing. We really need to start seeing things come to fruition as we get closer to the start of the season, which seems like it's so far away. But
Right.
we got to see some moves. Free agency draft. We've got to see some. We're going to see some difficult decisions. I want to set the expectation. You may see some of your favorite players go, and that's okay. That is okay. That is what good teams do. So
let me throw this at a couple things I want to throw you that as I've had some time to reflect and listen to the whole thoughts on the Lions. I also thought Dan Campbell maybe have used that as an off-season, uh, thing to keep in these guys' heads to be like, no, 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 no. This isn't our only window. We're going to come back harder, faster, stronger next year as a football team. I actually thought maybe that was his whole purpose too. Now that we've sat here and talked about that, I do want to get your comments on. I don't know if you saw the on Deshaun Watson's podcast, how he was throwing a little olive branch out there to T. Higgins, who will
Oh
soon
yeah.
be a free agent and a former Clemson Tiger.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, where these players now can, because we talked about this a little bit, and I guess obviously you brought up a good point. Some of our fan favorite players may go away. Some people, the first thing that I think is, well, how could we afford them, right? Like, where does
Right.
that come in? And that's where, and I want to get your take on this real quick, is that's where someone like Deshaun Watson has to go and say, hey, I'm willing to restructure my contract, put some of this money towards bonuses or
Mhm.
whatever. I want you to bring T. Higgins to Cleveland, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
this is
those
where
kind of things.
it really starts to get tricky. The
Yeah.
first couple of years of a contract, you can do things. There's a lot of maneuverability. There's a lot of leniency in what this front office can ultimately do and who they bring in. As we approach kind of the back end of this Deshaun Watson contract, it does get really difficult. So you're not going to see a ton of splash moves like we did in years prior. However, T. Higgins will be hitting the market. Certainly, I think if you've got eyes and you watch him, you should have interest. He's a very good football player, obviously has a connection to Deshaun Watson at his time in Clemson. Um, it all comes down to cost, and I don't really love having to talk about all of that and contracts and whatnot, just because there's so much to NFL contracts and money and maneuvering the money that frankly, it's really hard to digest and understand, and
It's,
be able to
hey,
talk
but
about
but I
professionally.
tell you what, Andrew Barry's really good at it.
He's really good at it. So if anybody can do it, he can. So yeah, absolutely, you have interest. There's going to be some guys that should be targets for this team, but really, it's going to get tough towards the back end of this contract just because of the way that it is currently structured. So we did see earlier this past season and this past offseason, a lot of guys restructuring their deals. Be curious to see if there's going to be any more of that and who it is, who that ultimately is, because there is some maneuverability, there's flexibility. It just really depends on who, what, when, where, and why. We do want to talk about our friends over at Angelo's Pizza. Guys, if you were wondering what you should have for dinner, the answer for you is Angelo's Pizza. Head on over to Lakewood to get your hands on the best pizza in all of Northeast Ohio. They do it right. They start out with a buttery crust, and they do double layer toppings. It is great in the restaurant, at home, and even just as great the following day. So be sure to head on over there to Angelo's today. And real quick, before we go ahead with our game picks, Dustin, just want to give you a quick reminder of what we've got going on in March. Dustin, how can they book? Tell them all about it.
Yeah, go over to brownsfancruise.com. Go out there, check out the website, go in there, log in under the guest list area, put HWGB as the code to let us know that you actually booked it and gave us a little shout out for that. And then you can be a part of some of the alumni that we're going to be hanging out with, do some VIP stuff that you might be able to partake in. And we're going to have some prizes to give away. So the code is HWGB. That's HWGB.
There you go. Go do it. All right. Last but not least, we've got one game to pick. We've got one game to pick. And
How did we do
obviously,
last week? How did we do last
so
week?
we tied.
I knew it.
So yes. And look, we actually don't have to pick this right now.
No, we don't.
We'll have
We got
some
2
time.
weeks.
So
We got 2 weeks.
let's hold off on picking this. We
Yeah.
can come up maybe with a little bit of a wager here. But yeah, we'll see
I
what
like it.
we'll see what we can do.
Allie's putting it out there. She put the wager. All right, here we go.
Ooh, winner, chicken dinner. So we'll see. Dustin, any closing thoughts as we wrap up on a beautiful Monday evening?
Allie, just a big thank you to all of our sponsors and a big thank you to everyone that tunes in. And thank you for coming to us on a Monday. If you didn't catch us, we'll put it out there for the replay edition and you can show it and we'll get it out there to you guys. But again, thank you. We'll be back, Allie, regular time next week. Next Wednesday, we're good for
We'll see you
regular
there.
time?
Yeah.
All right. So, by the way, guys, just thanks for joining us. Enjoy your week. Stay safe out there and stay healthy.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.